South Africa is standing at the edge of a public health catastrophe, one that could see 500,000 people perish and as many newly infected with HIV in just 10 years. This shocking forecast came from Linda-Gail Bekker, head of the Desmond Tutu HIV Foundation, who warned that South Africa's HIV fight is being dealt a fatal blow after the United States abruptly slashed critical funding to the country's health programs. In today's video, we will examine why this aid cut is happening, what this brutal projection will mean for South Africa, and the way forward. Before we proceed, let us first briefly examine the history of HIV in South Africa. For decades, South Africa has stood at the epicenter of the global HIV epidemic, with the virus tearing through communities at an alarming rate. By the early 2000s, the country faced a full-scale public health emergency, with millions infected and a government initially slow to respond. It was against this grim backdrop that the United States, under President George W. Bush, launched pepfar in 2003, a bold and unprecedented global initiative that directed billions of dollars toward fighting HIV in hard-hit nations like South Africa. Through USAID, this lifeline provided vital antiretroviral drugs, prevention programs, and community outreach, helping South Africa build one of the most ambitious HIV treatment programs in the world. For 2 decades, U.S. support became a cornerstone of South Africa's HIV response, a partnership that saved millions of lives and turned the tide of the epidemic. Today, South Africa's battle against HIV stands at a critical crossroads. With 7.8 million people living with the virus, the highest number in the world, the country has made significant progress thanks to widespread access to antiretroviral treatment, prevention campaigns, and community-based care, much of it funded by international support, particularly from USAID through pepfar. However, this fragile progress is now under severe threat after the sudden withdrawal of U.S. funding, leaving crucial programs without the necessary resources to continue. As South Africa's healthcare system grapples with rising demand, shrinking budgets, and a growing treatment gap, the hard-won gains of the last 2 decades are at risk of unraveling, placing millions of lives in danger and exposing the country to the possibility of a devastating resurgence of the epidemic. But why is this happening? President Donald Trump's decision to pull USAID funding to South Africa fits squarely into his America First agenda, a hardline stance that seeks to slash foreign aid in favor of domestic spending and nationalist priorities. Throughout his first presidency, Trump repeatedly questioned why American taxpayers should fund health programs overseas, while issues like homelessness, opioid addiction, and crumbling infrastructure remain unresolved within the United States. By freezing foreign assistance and cutting programs like pepfar in his second presidency, Trump aims to showcase his commitment to putting American interests above global responsibilities. Critics argue that this approach ignores the reality that global health stability directly affects American security and economic interests. But for Trump and his base, the message is clear: charity begins and ends at home. From South Africa's perspective, the abrupt U.S. aid cuts feel like a betrayal, a cold, calculated decision that disregards the lives of millions who depend on HIV programs to survive. South African health officials and activists argue that the cuts not only jeopardize progress but also shift the burden onto an already overstretched healthcare system, forcing the government to scramble for alternative funding in the middle of a public health emergency. The reaction in South Africa has been a volatile mix of anger, fear, and disbelief. Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi has vowed to intensify domestic efforts to combat the epidemic, pledging to have 1.1 million more people on treatment by the end of next year. But where will the money come from? The country's health budget is already under immense strain, and public hospitals are buckling under the weight of demand. Activists like Lynn Wilkinson, a prominent public health expert, warned that without immediate alternative funding, South Africa's HIV programs could collapse within months. She also called for the fight against HIV to be elevated to the highest national priority. For President Cyril Ramaphosa, The crisis is not just a public health emergency, it is a political nightmare. His government is already grappling with economic woes, high unemployment, and mounting public frustration. Adding a spiraling HIV death toll to the mix could trigger unrest on a scale not seen since the height of the AIDS crisis in the early 2000s. In a rare national address on the issue, Ramaphosa tried to reassure citizens that his administration would find solutions to fill the void left by the U.S. But with no concrete plan and a shrinking health budget, his promises ring hollow for many. The impact of the funding cut will be felt far beyond hospital wards. South Africa's globally respected HIV research institutions, community outreach programs, and prevention campaigns have all relied heavily on U.S. funding. Entire supply chains for life-saving antiretrovirals, from clinics in rural Limpopo to urban centers like Johannesburg, are interwoven with American dollars. Pulling that thread could unravel the entire fabric of South Africa's public health response to HIV. The story doesn't end there. Critics accuse the Trump administration of playing politics with human lives, using foreign aid as a weapon to punish countries that don't align with its ideological agenda. South Africa's progressive stance on issues like reproductive rights and LGBTQ inclusion has long put it at odds with the conservative factions influencing Trump's foreign policy. Is the funding cut truly about budgets, or is it part of a broader ideological clash? At the heart of this crisis lies a question that transcends politics and borders. What is the value of a human life? For the people living with HIV in South Africa, mothers, children, students, workers, the answer is clear. Their survival depends on consistent access to medication, prevention, and care. Without it, the gains made over 2 decades could evaporate almost overnight. And so, the world watches as South Africa teeters on the edge of disaster. Will the country rise to the challenge and find new ways to fund its fight against HIV? Or will this be the moment when progress reverses, lives are lost, and history repeats itself? In the absence of American generosity, does the global community have the moral courage to step in and fill the void? The answers for now remain painfully uncertain, but for 500,000 people whose lives hang in the balance, time is running out fast. Your perspective matters. What do you make of 500,000 South Africans potentially dying due to Trump's U.S. aid cuts? Share your thoughts and insights in the comments section below. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the New Africa channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our informative future videos. Stay informed, stay engaged, and thank you for watching.